Leah Mether is a communication specialist, speaker, trainer, and author of 2 books, Soft is the New Hard and Steer Through the Storm. She works with leaders and teams across Australia to help them communicate better under pressure. Before moving into leadership communication, Leah began her career as a journalist and corporate communications leader. Today, she helps leaders navigate difficult conversations, conflict, feedback, and change. Leah, welcome to the Evolution Partners podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Brad.
Why do so many leaders confuse being direct with being effective?
Question. What I would say is most leaders confuse it because they've never been taught the difference. A whole lot of leaders have been promoted into their positions off the back of their technical skills and experience and never actually been explicitly taught how to communicate effectively or even how to lead effectively. It's almost like, as long as you've got the experience in the role in terms of the technical bit, you'll work out this people bit, leadership bit, communication bit. And it is a whole different skill set. So I think most of the time it's not intentional when leaders don't communicate effectively, but they're just defaulting to whatever their style that they were raised, that they've grown up with that's innately theirs, without actually realizing that this is a skill set to develop.
Yeah. I mean, when they're under pressure, I think some leaders can steamroll, they can just push through. And then I've seen others that avoid the important conversations, or some people are also people pleasing. So there's different ways, and some are even shutting down. What is that pressure when applied and their reaction, what do you think that reveals about a leader's default communication style?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I actually write about, particularly leading through change. I often see one of 3 common responses. It's either the steamroller, the person who is just defaults to old school command and control, just no care for the human. We just need to get the job done. Let's go, high action person. They're not necessarily bad people, but they forget that they're leading humans. On the other end of the scale, you see those avoidant people. I often call them shirkers. The people who are shirking their responsibilities as a leader in terms of communicating. So they're avoiding hard conversations, hoping it'll magically fix itself, or falling into that people pleasing. And then you've got the people in the middle who do it well, who I refer to as steerers. They're the people who understand, I can't do it for you. I can't make you respond well or to be okay, but I can communicate effectively in a way that will help guide you through whatever challenge we're facing. Yeah, I think that what does it reveal about a leader? Again, it reveals often, this stuff goes right back to how you were raised. If you've never actually consciously focused on communication, on emotional intelligence, on leadership as a skill set, a lot of people are just fumbling around doing what they know. And some people do it well, particularly I find leaders who maybe coach sporting teams in their youth, or maybe were involved in volunteer work. And some people, yes, there is an element of innate ability here, but it is a skill set. And I think the other thing that happens here is a whole lot of leaders fall into the trap of thinking everyone else thinks exactly like them and not realizing that all humans are different. So it actually reveals a lot, from a lack of self-awareness sometimes to, in other cases, just that feeling like I'm right, you're wrong, like it or lump it, I'm the boss. So actually I can communicate however the hell I want and you just have to suck it up. And I do come across those leaders still, those leaders who kind of, say exactly that, I'm the founder or I'm the boss, I'm paying you well. So how I communicate or how I treat you is secondary. However, those are also the leaders who often come to me and say, Leah, how do I get more out of my people? And my response there is, well, people drive performance. So if you want to get more out of your people, they need to want to do good work for you. And how you communicate, show up, support them, particularly under pressure, is absolutely key to that.
You use the word show up there.
Yeah.
And that's quite interesting because I think that what leaders can think is the way that they're showing up, the way that they're they're presenting as a leader can be very different from what the team experience or the people who report to them experience. When a leader stops and contemplates perhaps their job is leadership, so what do they want to be known for? How do you think that kind of a question changes the way that leaders get that self-reflection that you just mentioned, get that self-awareness perhaps?
Yeah, intention and perception are two very different things, right? Most leaders even the ones who behave really poorly, most of the time they're not coming to work intending to be a jerk or intending to do a bad job. Most people have positive intent, but we judge ourselves by our intentions. So if I've just yelled at you, Brad, in my head, I'm going, but I'm really stressed at the moment and Brad knows I really like him and I didn't mean it. And that's all my internal dialogue. All you saw was, Leah just ripped my head off. How rude. So there's that gap that we often have. I love that you just use one of my absolute favorite questions that I use with leaders all the time. So the absolute foundation of improving your communication is choice. It is, forget other people, it is about you. It is a choice to take personal responsibility for your own communication and behavior with no room for yeah but. And we like yeah but as humans, yeah but they started it, or yeah but you haven't seen the people I work with, they're really difficult. Park all of that and ask that question, what do I want to be known for as a leader? What is important to me? And this is a really individual question, not what do I think the leadership books say that I'm meant to show up. Like, really go to this yourself as, what do I want to be known for as a leader? What do I want people to say about me when I'm not in the room? And once you're really clear on that, the second question, and that's the harder one, is, and if I want to be known for that, how am I showing up? What's it like to be around me? Now, usually for me, a little red light that someone's not willing to self-reflect and, work on their self-awareness is when I ask that question, what's it like to be around you? They'll deflect straight away and they'll say, oh, well, how would I know? You'll have to ask my people. And of course, we can do that, but let's just sit with it for a sec. You want to be known for being approachable, perhaps. Just saying it doesn't make it so. What are you doing to be known for being approachable? How are you creating that? So what's it like to be around me? What's the me experience like for other people? And crucially, am I modeling the behavior that I want to see in others? So here's what I want to be known for. Here's where I'm at. There'll always be a gap, and the work is in that gap. What I would say to any leader listening who's kind of going, oh, I think I'm doing okay, and you might be, is there is no such thing as a perfect communicator. No one gets this stuff right all the time. And actually, the minute you think you know it all, you are stuffed. Like, I teach this for a living. I've written 2 books on it. I stuff up my communication all the time because I am human. And I think when we come at it with that humility of saying this isn't like a technical skill where you can learn it, tick a box and go, I did that. I did communication training that one time 15 years ago, I'm good. This is lifelong learning, and that willingness to keep improving, to understand that, the way you communicate might have worked with the team you had 15 years ago, but now you've got different people in your team. So you need to adapt. It's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater and going, I've got to be inauthentic and fake or change who I am. But different strokes for different folks. If you want to get the best out of your people, we have to be able and willing to adapt and adjust.
In your experience, what does it feel like to be around an effective leader then?
I love that you said, what does it feel like? Because you are spot on. There's that beautiful Maya Angelou quote that often gets repeated because it is so good that, that one, I'll butcher it here probably, but it's that people will forget what you said and they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So again, if we go back to people drive performance. If I am working with an effective leader, I want to be my best for them. I want to do great work with someone who is communicating effectively. Now, I think where a lot of people go wrong here is they fall into the trap of thinking that what I'm talking about is this softly, everyone like me approach to communication where you're everyone's best friend and far out, I'm a boss, come on, I've got a job to do. Absolutely, you've got a job to do. I often describe it as the best leaders and the most effective communicators balance empathy and accountability. So they do show up, they make you feel cared for, they inspire you to want to do good work. They care about you as a human, not just as someone who is doing the job. So they see you as a whole person. If someone sees me like that and still holds me accountable, right? I am still there to do a job. They give me constructive feedback when I need it, but they give it in a way that the intention is clearly to help me grow, improve, and develop, not blame, shame, and punish. That is where you see when leaders lead from that really effective, communicating well place. People thrive. The communication's clear, curious, and kind, and everyone lifts. So you're not just doing the accountability with no empathy. So you're doing that sort of, again, that older school command and control style approach where I don't care about you as a human, you're just here to do a job. Doesn't get the best out of people because they don't want to do their best work for you. But it's also not going too far the other way and saying, please like me. If I just give you cupcakes every day and I'm everyone's best friend, maybe you'll just magically step up and do the work for me. It's not doing that either. People are there to do a job. So that balance and that tension, this is what makes effective communication and effective leadership so challenging, right? Because there's not a silver bullet. There is not just, hey, do this in every situation and it's going to work for you. It's navigating that tension and knowing when you need to dial up a bit of the empathy and dial up a bit of the accountability that's key.
How much of that is related to the work that's done in setup or beforehand? I mean, how many hard conversations that people need to have are actually hard because the leader hasn't done the work in setting those expectations? To your point about accountability.
Yeah, I'm giggling here because I think you probably know my answer. So many conflict conversations, difficult conversations did not need to get to that point. You know, I've been brought into organisations before where they've said to me, Leah, can you help us? We've got to have this hard conversation with this person because their performance or their behaviour is not up to scratch. And my very first question is usually, okay, no worries. Have you made it clear what good performance or good behaviour looks like? And the number of times people have said to me, oh, well, no, but they should know. It's like you can't hold people accountable if they do not know what they're being held accountable for. So success is in the setup in terms of clear expectations. What does good look like? What does done well look like? Make sure and that's not a set and forget conversation. And then, let's face it, even if you do the setup, really clear expectations, sometimes things go wrong. But if you're someone listening who hates conflict and confrontation, it makes your skin crawl. It sounds counterintuitive, but my number one piece of advice is get good at having conversations early. Get good at nipping issues in the bud when they're a bit uncomfortable rather than whopping great issues, and come in with curiosity instead of making assumptions. I've noticed a change in your behavior, or, I noticed that, whatever has happened, can you talk to me about that? And then if you've done all of that and you're still in the difficult conversation, there is even set up there. And the key piece is making your intention really clear, and like I said when I spoke about feedback a few minutes ago, the intention should always be to help the other person grow, improve, and develop, to help get a positive outcome. And if you come in with that intention, even if you are having a really hard conversation, even if ultimately it leads to a termination, you can terminate someone with kindness. Yeah. Now, that sounds, again, counterintuitive, but if you draw on Brene Brown's work of clear is kind, if you're delivering the message to try to support and help the person, you are being really clear, you're giving them the feedback that will help them, if they choose to, take that learning and go on and not make the same mistake again or improve from here. That's the kindest thing you can do.
Yeah.
We confuse nice and kind too often, I think.
I agree. I have written 2 books about onboarding, and that's setting expectations in a sense. And one of the things that I say to leaders in that context is at the outset, at the beginning, it's kind and clear to be able to say, this is why I will need to fire you. Now, I don't want to fire you, but this is very, very clearly the expectations of the role. This is what success looks like in the role. So
Yes.
setting that clarity from the outset, it matters so much along the way.
It really does. And on the big picture stuff, like here's what the role requires, but even down to a micro level. So if I was asking you, Brad, to write me a report, if I just said to you, oh, Brad, can you get me a report on that project? Thanks. And then because I'm a busy leader, that's all I've given you, and I walk off. Now, if you're a perfectionist, you might go, clear the decks. I've got to spend the next 2 weeks writing a comprehensive 50-page report for Leah, because in your head, that's what a good report looks like. Now, what I might have meant was, can you get me 5 dot points in an email by the end of the day, because I need this for a board meeting tonight? But I might have left that whole thing out. I've expected you to read my mind, and all I've said is, can you get me a report on this project? Now, this again is where so many conflicts stem from, because there's not been that clarity at the start about what good looks like. So there's responsibility on both parts here. If I am the leader giving the instruction, hey, Brad, can you get me a report on this project? And when I say a report, all I'm after is a 1-page summary. I do need it by the end of the day because I've got a board meeting tonight. Don't worry about the detail. I just need where are we at? Any issues, whatever it might be. That just took less than a minute to explain, right? It didn't, people who say I don't have time for this, I would argue you don't have time not to do this, because it will cost you so much time at the back end. Now, I'm doing that as a leader, but if you as the receiver weren't clear, that's the time, anyone listening who gets an instruction, that's the time to clarify. So it might, and the way to do that without, in a way that actually shows the leader or the board chair that you're actually asking these questions to help them, is to say something like, no worries, Brad, to make sure I deliver what you're after, can you share with me a bit more context about what good looks like? So how long are we talking? When do you need it by? And if we just spend that little bit of time up front clarifying, we are so much more likely to hit the mark for people. So that bit of extra time avoids so much frustration down the track.
This episode is brought to you by Evolution Partners, where we help leaders to confidently build enduring great companies using our proven, structured, strategic planning process that ensures you build and execute the right plan to build the business that you want and the life that you want. Check us out at evolutionpartners.com.au. And you can also check out our books, Made to Thrive, which is about the 5 roles of a CEO, becoming a great CEO rather than just a good CEO in your business. Second is Onboarded, which is about hiring and onboarding great people, making sure that you give yourself the greatest chance for people to succeed in your organization. And then third is Bigger Isn't Better, Better is Better, which is about building a business that is better rather than bigger. It's not about building a little business. It's about building a business that compounds, a business that you can actually fall in love with again. When someone says, I've got a difficult person in my team, something that I've heard quite a few times, I'm sure it's something that you've heard quite a few times. What are you listening for or looking for before you're deciding if it's a problem with the person or a leadership problem?
Yeah, I'm asking some questions. So I'm getting curious straight up. So when you say they're difficult, talk to me. What sorts of things are we talking about here? And I'm really doing that piece to try to understand, is it a difference in personality? Is it an unclear expectations? And, I'll often ask questions like, okay, and so what else could be going on there? There's a story we're telling ourselves, and so often it's based on our own assumptions of what's going on. So that what else could be true can be a really great question. And what I'm listening for, if a leader's saying they're difficult, is has the leader done some of that work already to get curious, to maybe explore, or are they just dismissing as they're difficult? And, some of the things I'm looking for are, are we saying they're difficult because they don't agree with everything you say? Is it the way they're communicating? Is it that your style of communication and theirs are really different and you haven't ever had a conversation about that difference and how do we work well together? There can be so much going on here, but probably like you, the minute I just hear, oh, they're difficult to work with, there can be a gendered piece in there sometimes too. I work in a lot of male-dominated industries, and there can be from both sides. There can be a gendered piece sometimes in there. There's often a lot more going on than just someone is difficult.
Yeah.
What is difficult anyway?
They're not responding, reacting, performing in the way that I want.
Yes.
Is my answer to that.
Yes.
And it's concerning to me.
Yeah, I think, and we're seeing an increase in this at the moment, right? With everything that's going on in the world, I'm seeing this, and I'd be interested if you are too. But with the increased polarization, with people on a global stage in leadership acting really poorly, I'm seeing it start to trickle down into businesses, into big organisations, into small and medium-sized businesses. Social media and the discourse there probably plays a part as well, in that a lot of people are losing the ability to disagree with respect and to debate ideas without attacking people. We're seeing a lot of black and white thinking, that polarized thinking, I'm right, you're wrong, disagreement is bad, we're all just meant to agree, or if you don't agree, you're dead to me. This is really dangerous. We need to be able to rumble with those big ideas, to debate ideas and disagree, and we build on ideas to get the best ideas, to make great decisions. We have to be able to put the issue in the middle of the table, and I'll often describe it as stay hard on the issue, soft on the person. So it's not a bad thing to disagree. How we do it absolutely matters. And like I said, a lot of people are doing it really badly at the moment because, they're in the comments on social media and they're just, lobbing bombs at each other. That's not helpful. But I think that seeing someone as difficult because they ask questions or because they don't approach things how you approach things, oftentimes they're the most valuable person in your team. If you can harness it well, if you can, it's not just about being devil's advocate. If you can harness that and they're working with positive intent to the benefit of the team, that's actually hugely valuable.
Yeah. And I mean, that really doubles down to a degree on your point earlier, which is how do I want to show up? What do I want to be known for? And it's about your ability to perhaps metaphorically look in the mirror or understand what is it that I want to deliver as a leader. And they've used the word servant leadership, but how can I serve the people to help them grow so I can achieve my goals and the business goals?
And I think I would say there, occasionally I do still come up against a leader who, to that question of what do I want to be known for, will say, I don't care. I don't care what people think about me. I do just need to get the job done. I'm not here to be liked. I'm not here to be everyone's best friend. And my counter to that is often, but do you want them doing their best work for you? And that's usually what makes the light bulb go on for those people who are in that space of, I don't care what people think of me. When they realize that this isn't soft, fluffy stuff. This is directly tied to your results, to the results you get in your business, if people are just doing baseline, what they have to do to get the job done, because you treat them poorly, you're rude, you're aggressive, you don't show any care or interest in them as people, people will do their job for you, but they won't go over and above. And you'll probably always be frustrated by, I get high performance out of my people. So this stuff really, really matters. It's not just some nice to have.
I think that because there's been a lot of bad management over time, people look at management and leadership as not being its own profession and not being its own skill set, perhaps. And I think that they undervalue that and think or disconnect the fact that leaders and managers get paid more for a reason. And that reason is that, yes, they have a good degree of technical skill often, but moreover, they have a skill set that is perhaps rare. And so that's why, because it's not like there is exceptional, amazing management and leadership everywhere. Because it's rare is why people get paid more. So why do we so often promote people for technical skill, but fail to consider the human side that actually determines whether they can lead?
Yeah, it's such a great question, because I still see it happen all the time. It's like they've been here the longest, they know their stuff, so we'll promote them into a job where actually their job is no longer to do all the nitty gritty of the technical stuff, except you will find that those leaders who do get promoted, who haven't been equipped with the skills to lead effectively, they're often the micromanagers, because they do feel totally out of their depth. They want to be doing the technical stuff because that's their comfort zone. So they're leaning over everyone's shoulders, still in the weeds, rather than taking that step up to be strategic and work as a leader. I would even take it a step further. I differentiate the skill set between management and leadership. And, you know, whatever your title within an organization, if you are a leader or a manager, you actually need both skill sets. But management's about tasks, leadership's about people. That's the simplest explanation I use. Obviously, there's a lot under that. And we need management skills, right? It's your planning, your scheduling. What are we trying to do here? Are all my ducks in a row? Here's what we need to get done. Hugely important. What I find is a lot of those technical experts who are promoted into leadership, they actually, if they do have a skill set that can be used in the job, it tends to be management heavy. And they don't realize that there's a whole separate skill set, which is the leadership part, which is the people bit, which is the having a vision. It's bringing people along with you. It's modeling the behavior, not just do as I say. It's I'm leading by example. Coaching, asking questions, that whole people part is the leadership skill set. I think there's a few things going on in the promoting it. I think a lot of the people doing the promoting don't actually realize the skills that are required to lead well either, because it hasn't been valued traditionally. You know, my first book is called Soft is the New Hard, and it's a play on that term, soft skills. There is nothing soft and easy about this stuff. This is the hardest part. The people bit is the hardest part of leadership. I have had that many leaders sit across from me and say, why does no one tell you this bit is the trickiest? I thought I knew what I was doing here. I've got the skills, I've got the experience, but now I'm in this role. And how, you know, I've got some people who are different from me that I'm having challenges with. What do I do? So I think we've got to recognize.
What was that? It's a different profession.
It's a different profession. And I think the world is slowly catching up to the fact that we dropped the ball on these skills. I think there's two main reasons we haven't been taught them. One is, for a really long time, skills like communication, leadership, the essential human skills, were seen as innate. You're either born good at it or you're not. That's not true. Yes, we can have our natural differences and abilities, but these are skill sets that can be learned, improved, and developed. My two big caveats to that, though, are if you're willing to learn and if you're willing to do the work. If you sit there going, bet you can't teach me, well, we can't, neither you or I are magicians. The second reason, though, is that for a really long time, these skill sets were dismissed as the soft, fluffy extras. Nice to have, but not as important as the technical skills and experience. And the world is really waking up to the fact we dropped the ball on this stuff. And it's not just me saying it, it's not just you saying it. It's the likes of NASA, who has realised that most of its mission failures don't come down to technical failures, they're teamwork or communication failures. It's the Royal Australian College of Surgeons who in 2022 did a study into preventable deaths in surgery in Australia. And they found that the majority, and it was even quoted in the study, that it could potentially be up to 90% of preventable deaths in surgeries in Australia were due to communication or teamwork, soft skill failures in surgery. Now, I've got dodgy knees. I'm guilty before of saying, my surgeon doesn't need to be a people person as long as he knows or she knows what they're doing. Turns out that's not true. I do need them to be able to communicate effectively under pressure. So this skill set is vital, and we're only seeing an increase of it and an increased value with the explosion of AI. The next 12 months to 2 years are going to be really interesting, because gone are the days where you could just say, oh yeah, but my technical skills will carry me through. Your human skills are what's going to set you apart from the robots. Yeah. As we continue to outsource a lot of the day-to-day tech-heavy parts of our roles, it's the trust building, it is the people part, it is the relationships and connection that is becoming more and more important. So if you haven't invested the time developing these skills until now, I would be saying to listeners, now is the time to double down on leadership, on your human skills, because if you want to future-proof your career, if you want to, be a leader who still has people wanting to work for you, this is where it's at.
You spoke about performance under pressure there. In times of change, pressure often increases. And during that, what do leaders miss? How do they respond? How does their perhaps archetype personality change? And then what do they miss along that journey?
Yeah, a couple of things. So my second book, Steer Through the Storm, came about because of a question I had from a leader before COVID, actually. And he said, Leah, have you got anything on leading people through change? Not leading change, leading people through change. He was from the power industry, coal-fired power. And obviously that's an industry in huge transition. And he said, there's all this change happening whether we like it or not. It's not my change. I'm not leading the change, but it's impacting my team. Have you got anything on leading people through it? And this is when I realized the massive gap in the market around that difference between managing change and teaching leaders how to lead people through it. I think what we tend to see are those two extremes of shirker or steamroller. So you get those people who just say, change is happening, bad luck folks, get on board, we've just got to get through. They totally ignore and disregard the impact it has on their people. They ignore the feelings and frustrations of the people and just try to go, bad luck, we're doing this, let's go, go, go. Now those leaders, the big danger for them is they might move through the change quickly, but they look over their shoulder and guess what? No one's following them. Everyone's behind, resisting, because they are stuck. They are having big feelings, and you've just totally plowed through and ignored that. You can change your structure, you can change your processes, but unless people actually go with you and do it, those changes will never be effective. So I see that extreme. But the other thing I see, and this is very common, and again, we saw it, so that leader gave me a real gift. He said that to me just before COVID, and then COVID hit, which was, I certainly, for that book, got so many examples of poor leadership and good leadership through that time. But what can happen under pressure, particularly when the change is not our change? It's global instability, it is, whether it's fuel prices, wars going on, AI, whatever it might be. Leaders make the mistake of thinking, because it's not my change and I can't influence it and I don't like the change anyway, they think they don't have a role to play in leading their people through it. That is such a mistake. If you are a people leader and there is change or uncertainty impacting your team, part of your role, in fact, an essential part of your role, is how you show up, communicate, and steer people through it. Now, it's not all on your shoulders. You can't do it for them, but how you communicate under pressure is key, and it does require that balance of warmth and strength, empathy and accountability. The framework I use talks about the need to create clarity, to connect with curiosity, to challenge with candor, coach with compassion, and to keep banging the drum and commit with consistency. And not say, and this is actually a real example, not say, as a leader said to me recently, but I told him about the change in an email 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And in his mind, that was tick, change, communication done. Takes a lot more than that, folks.
And to that point, so how do leaders create psychological safety whilst maintaining accountability? Because it feels a bit like a teeter-totter or a seesaw where you must maintain accountability.
Yeah.
But you know, we know the importance of psychological safety in that as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people really get confused about what psychological safety is at the moment. And I'm actually seeing that have a real impact on accountability. So if we strip it back, psychological safety is feeling like you can speak up, contribute without fear of being blamed, shamed, humiliated, embarrassed. So if I feel psychologically safe, we actually should be able to have the hard conversations. We should be able to be accountable, because if I'm not performing, if we actually have true psychological safety in our team, you can tell me that early and I won't feel like I'm under attack, because I know that.
I'm just laughing because I'm sorry to cut you off there. I'm just laughing because it's so obvious.
It is so obvious, but here's where I'm seeing the mistakes happen at the moment. I'm seeing people confuse being unsafe with uncomfortable. And that's probably the big one that I'm seeing. So if you're giving me feedback that I don't like, because actually you're telling me that my work hasn't been up to scratch lately, and you're doing it in a lovely way, but I don't really like what I'm hearing from you. I might be uncomfortable, but that does not mean I'm unsafe. But I am seeing the term weaponized because people are misunderstanding it and saying, no, Brad, I need you to stop right there because I don't feel safe. Hang on a minute. True psychological safety, we should be able to do that. Now, on the flip, of course, you get leaders who do it poorly and don't make the person feel safe. Like if you were giving me feedback and you were berating me and, Leah, I don't know how the hell you could get this wrong and blah, 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 well, then I might have a case. But this idea that unsafe and uncomfortable are the same thing. I'm encouraging and I'm facilitating with a lot of teams at the moment conversations about, well, what is the difference? What does uncomfortable look like and what does unsafe look like? The flow on from this is that you've got some leaders who are terrified of speaking up because they're worried about being labelled the bully, or having a complaint against them, or they think, and this is another way psychological safety is being weaponized, is people think that it means harmony, that it means if it's safe, we all just smile and nod at each other and get along. Now that's dangerous in a team, because then all the issues go under the carpet. We don't challenge ideas. And the irony being, this is exactly the opposite of what psychological safety actually is. So I think we need to do this work within teams, and it's not just as a lecture, it's actually exploring some of those questions as a team. What does psychological safety actually mean? If a team has psychological safety, what would we be seeing? Because you want people to understand that actually if we have psychological safety, it doesn't mean that we all just smile and nod and don't have hard conversations. It means we have the hard conversations really well, with care, with consideration. Again, hard on the issue, soft on the person. That we will have that robust conversation, but recognize I'm dealing with a human, and I do have to take care of how I deliver the message. But yeah, that drop in accountability is something that I think every leader needs to be very aware of at the moment. And if you haven't explored with your team, that difference between unsafe and uncomfortable, I'd encourage you to do it, because we don't want to go too far off course here, because it can be hard to get back.
I love it. What is a book that you would recommend for our audience? We like to ask every guest so we can get a wide variety of options.
Yeah, look, at the moment there is, if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said Oliver Burkeman's 4,000 Weeks, which is still a ripper book. I've read a lot of books on productivity and time management over the years, but this one is that cracker because it puts life in perspective. If we live till we're 80, we get 4,000 weeks. That's not many. I'd be over my 2,000 at the moment at 44. It's a ripper book. I love it. But the one I'd actually love to recommend today, it's this one here, and I did have a copy, Red Brick Thinking by Donna McGeorge. Now, Donna is a friend of mine, but this book is, it's her best yet. She's got a number of books. But Red Brick Thinking is a book about strategic subtraction. And it does link to Oliver Burkeman's work. So essentially, what the Red Brick Thinking concept is that as leaders, often when something goes wrong or we face a challenge, we think, right, what do I need to do here to fix it? And it usually falls to our addition bias. What can I add here? What do I need to do? What Red Brick Thinking is about is the concept of actually, what do I need to take away here? What do I need to stop doing? What do I need to prioritize? If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So what do I need to remove to help my business, my team succeed? And whether it's in your personal life, in your leadership, that stripping back and taking things away and less is more. I just think it's a concept that it's such a fresh take. It is such a fresh book. And it was a big game changer for me.
Very good. How can people learn more about you and the work that you do?
Yeah. So all the socials, or my website there. So much free content from me online, leahmether.com.au. There's also a YouTube channel with over 300 videos. I have run for about 8 years now a weekly segment called Ask Leah. People send me their tricky people stuff questions. I record a video answering it, so you can search that, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's in the media, plug my name into your search engine and things will come up. There's so many free resources on my website, and I would say that genuinely to people, whether I work with you or never ever do, jump on, download some of those free frameworks, because this stuff, the communication piece, the human part, it's too important not to invest the time in. So jump on or grab a book and I hope it helps.
Thank you. We'll put some links in the show notes as well. What haven't we covered off today that you hoped to cover off?
What I would, and I think we did cover it, but it would be that reminder to anyone listening, to any leader listening, that if you want to improve your communication and your leadership, it starts with you. And that sounds so bloody obvious, but so many of us forget that. We jump straight to, give me the tips and tricks for how I communicate or how I have that conversation. And that's all important. And yes, I can help you out with that. However, that's the last step in a process. If you are serious about wanting to improve your communication, it's an inside out job, and it starts with that personal responsibility for how you show up, communicate and behave. That humility to recognize you don't get it right all the time, and to try to learn more about what it is like to be around you. So working on that self-awareness piece, working on what you want to be known for, is absolutely where to start.
Wonderful. What a great way to close. Leah Mether, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. It's been an enlightening conversation, and you've just got some really interesting and fresh takes. It's been my pleasure. Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. If you'd be kind enough to leave a review for the podcast, that'd be really helpful to other like-minded entrepreneurs, and then we can grow our community. If you want to find out more about our guests, head over to evolutionpartners.com.au/podcast, where you can find show notes and other additional reading. Hope to see you back next week. Until then, keep thriving.